Hey folks, this is Brian. I had a hefty day today, very long at work, trying to get a proposal done before 9 o'clock tomorrow, kind of thing. And so people trying not to work too much over the holiday weekend. A lot going on today. But anyway, made it home, got a chance to eat. It's kind of late now, but I figured I would try to squeeze out another section of my weapons and equipment review. This section is on armor, another favorite of mine. My buddy used to always harass me about um, redoing my weapon and armor tables because I find something new and so I have to adjust everything. Crazy things. But anyway, armor. Okay. Combat is deadly. Some people, eschew armor because they follow gods of peace and harmony and fertility, right? So not everybody wears armor. Although they talk about armor layering, which has always been an issue in the RPG I've played with. But essentially, it comes down to flexible armors being worn under or over rigid armors. And there's a table. They got these little asterisk marks there. Those can be layered. And note that if your armor is damaged, you can immediately make repairs by using a craft skill. Color box on wearing armor. It talks about sleeping in armor. Now, you can take a nap in armor, but try spend the whole night sleeping, especially with rigid type armors, is not restful. So if I had fatigue rules, I would apply those. Here they simply say to treat adventurers as though they are encumbered in order to give you penalties if they insist on sleeping in their armor. And always at the end of your phase or sacred time phase of the game, all of your armor is repaired. Part of your standard of living. Okay. Armor materials. And this is a cool picture. I love this picture. I like the colors too. But they talk about, briefly here, what does it say? Okay. Followers of the Hia, swordsmen, go to great expense to import turtle carapace to the Grayslands for their famous cuirasses. So I'm assuming that the Hia swordsman is maybe a subcult of Humak. I remember somewhere there being something, probably in the blue book somewhere, about the tortoise shell cuirasses being special for Humakti cults. Anyway, it talks about other materials, right? There are rare materials out there. They take special effort, or maybe an exclusive type opportunity. And there's a list of different kinds, like elf bark. And it's kind of interesting. The Aldriami grow their armor just as they grow their bows and other weapons. And I recall there being a comment somewhere about elf bark armor growing it longer so it increases what it absorbs. Maybe it's in that treasure book. What's it called? The old one. Shoot, never mind. But so standard is 2-point armor. But maybe if it's old enough, it gets thick enough, it's 3-point armor, that kind of thing. And I started thinking, if the armor can grow, what about their bow? Could their bow grow to be not stiffer because it's alive? It kind of adjusts its own strength, and that's kind of thing I tie in other game systems, right? Where I mix and match things. An elf bow matches its strength against the strength of the elf, right? So it does gives a damage bonus. But if it can grow to be more than needing a strength of 9 to pull on, maybe it does more damage. Okay, the carapace, talk about insect carapace, and talk specifically about trolls because trolls do all the insect stuff, right? But I was wondering about. I have it here. Hold on. The Arania cult, right? The spider cult. Spiders have carapaces too, right? That's going to have a play in my game if they ever get to where they need to go. Okay. Rhino hide is rare. Also because of how thick and stinky it is. There's an extra modifier to their hide roll. Okay, leather. Light and heavy leather. 1 and 2 point leather armors. Light leather is supple. Heavy leather is rigid, like shoe sole thickness. And we're talking, you can't see how close that is, but you know, thick. And I've got a roll of I think I mentioned that in the last. I've got a roll in the closet here someday. Maybe I'll pull it out and show you just how thick this stuff is. And I've made my own armor out of that stuff, and it can distribute, and absorb a significant amount of armor, especially if you put some padding underneath it. It's great. And we'll talk a little bit about its stiffness later on. Okay, linen armor. This is is it waxed? Glued. The glued linen. Layer, 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 glue, glue, glue. Yes, it's very stiff. Well, it's actually very thick. So it's hard. They mentioned ring mail here. Metal rings butted together and sewn to leather clothing. When I first started RuneQuest, and ring mail was 4 points of armor protection, and it had a pretty decent encumbrance versus protection ratio, and I really liked that idea. Then I started realizing this is just augmented leather. That's what studded leather is as well. They should be essentially the same, right? You've got leather with some kind of metal augmentation associated with it. And if you're wearing something that's sewn onto a backing and somebody's hacking at you with a sword, stuff gets cut off. Okay. Scale, light and heavy. And I remember, I think it's in the blue book. Heavy scale is bronze plate, right? And light scale was Kiboli, or boiled leather plates, right? And so the boiled leather has a smaller subtraction to your stealth skills than the heavy, because plate makes noise, whereas leather, not as much, right? Here, though, they say that light scales are small and thin, heavy scales are thick and larger. Small metal plates, usually bronze. We'll touch that in a minute again. Okay, lots of tables with all of the armors. Hit the type of the material that's made of, the location it covers, the type of what it's called, the hit location, how much it absorbs, its encumbrance, cost, and the move quietly modification. A lot of stuff here. The only thing I would point out is that they do not have heavy leather vambraces listed. You've got 1 point leather, and you've got Kiboli. Kiboli is just boiled heavy leather, right? So why not heavy leather? So I've written it in. Okay, heavy leather. Remember we talked about shoe leather thickness, right? Heavy leather pants covers the abdomen and both legs. You cannot sit down in a pair of pants made out of shoe sole leather, okay? So I just take that out. You can have 1 point leather pants. Okay. Talk again about the tortoiseshell cuirass, the Grayslander Humati cult. Here we go. Associated with the hero. He is swordsman. Okay. What else we got? Oh, the light scale hauberk. Just mentioned here, thin bronze or the boiled leather plates. I would strictly go with the boiled leather, just because if you got metal on metal is going to make more noise than leather on leather. Lintharax, often reinforced metal plates or scale. Really? Then how come we don't have a different set of augmented absorption? Because it's definitely, if you reinforce it, it's going to absorb more damage, right? It's also going to be heavier, much heavier, depending upon how thick things are. Unless they're talking about, it's not Lintharax. Linen and quilted. Nope, just it. Quilted and linen. That's it. Linen Lintharax. Okay. This is the glue stuff, right? Okay. Heavy leather skirt. Not listed in the table. When I first thought of this, I thought of, essentially a solid skirt, maybe definitely split in the back, right? Because it's going to be wide open, because you're going to have to attach it and just, attach to the top kind of thing, right? So it'll flare as you move around. Maybe slit up the front some because they'll give you some more flexibility when you get into stance, right? Then I started thinking maybe this is what they're trying to simulate the Roman skirt with, because those lames of the Roman skirt are heavy leather. Okay, then go explanation of the armor table headings, right? You've got materials, we talked about all that. The move point. Now, one thing when I first started doing this as a GM is I had guys with multiple types of armor that subtracted from the move quietly. I had them add that all together. So if you're tromping around in plate, you're making a lot of noise rather than if you're just wearing greaves, right? But rules as written, you do not add all the different types together. You simply take the one with the highest subtraction. And yeah, I guess I'm okay with that. Maintaining and repairing your armor. They talk about greasing leather straps. Now, I've never greased leather before. I have oiled it, though, to keep it flexible and that sort of thing. Maybe it's just mistranslation? I don't know. Okay. Oh, they do talk about how in a civilized armor worn by most civilized people in Glorantha is not just plain, right? They're going to embellish it. It's going to be enameled and stained and painted and etched and colored with brilliant patterns and dramatic colors and emblazoned with runes and stuff. And yeah, I buy off on that completely. You may even have clan and tribal emblems and art motif in there. That's going to possibly apply to something we'll get to in just a bit. Again, you can use your craft skill to repair your armor and your shields. And then they talk about the different kinds of, blacksmithing is for iron. So only certain people can work with iron and actually have that skill. They got carpentry, leatherworking, redsmithing, which is the bronze work kind of stuff, right? And weaving for doing repairs for your armor. Well, they talk about again mechanics, right? What happens if you make your crafting skill? It repairs 1d3 points of damage, just like first aid on a body. Consistency, that's cool. I like that. Special success 2d3, the same consistency, right? And a critical 1d3 plus 3, again, same consistency with first aid. Altering your armor. Okay, so you bust through the troll's horde and you find some armor that you really, really like, right? Okay, poorly fitting armor is a hindrance, right? Even if it's the same size, because something as vague as a size can have different dimensions to it, right? But if you modify it to fit, it's going to fit. They talk about here that if it's more than a 2 size point difference, so if you're size 13 and there's a size 15 troll carapace, then there's a modifier for that. So the encumbrance becomes 1.5 of what that standard one would be because of the ill-fitting stuff. It slides, it throws you off, that kind of stuff, right? Now, you can use your craft skills to make adjustments to armor. But it only goes so far, right? So your flexible armors can be adjusted downward in size fairly easily, but upwards only by 1 point. Okay, certain types of armor, it says like Kiroli and linen, and I would simply say rigid. Any rigid armor cannot be modified by more than plus or minus 1 because of the way they're fitted to the body, right? But then it goes on and says, heavier suits such as segmented armor and bronze plate cannot be adjusted by more than 1 except by melting down the armor and making new stuff. Okay, making armor. Yes, you can make armor if you've got the skill, right? Raw materials cost about 1/10. But special materials must be provided. The amount of material you need is equal to the encumbrance of the armor. And while it's not exact 1-for-1 because it'll be leftover scraps, that kind of thing, that's kind of given to the guy making the armor as a benefit. Okay, the cost to commission a custom piece of armor is half again. When I think custom piece, I'm thinking custom fit, right? Because it applies that, it counters that with buying one ready-made, right? So you buy off the shelf or custom fit, right? So it's going to cost you half again. Because measurements, etc. Right. What's the effect of that? It seems to me that if you have armor that's custom fit to you, it's going to be maybe less encumbering than off the shelf for your size. In the fancy trip, which I dip into all of the time for combat rules, they have it's called fine plate. It's essentially like field plate, right? It's plate that it covers more of you, right? And it's all fitted to you, so everything's covered and it all moves nice and fits tight and everything else, right? And it's less encumbering, also absorbs more. And I can kind of argue it doesn't for here in Glorantha, it doesn't absorb more. I can certainly see it being less encumbering, perhaps. So that's something I'll think about. Okay. Then there's a piece on armor smithing. Nice little table here about the location, head, arms, chest, etc., right? And how many days it takes to make the item. And then there's a list of the materials that you multiply. They have a multiplication factor to number of days. For example, head is 3 days if you use a leather, make a leather helmet, right? A cap. Takes 3 days because leather is times 1. Kirboli is times 1.5, heavy leather times 1.5. I would argue against that because Kirboli takes longer to do because of the boiling factor. And they've got this list for all the different materials, right? I'm looking at this going, heavy leather arms, 2 days for each piece. So 2 van braces, 4 days. For 1 point leather, 4 days. For 1 point leather, I can pump you out 1.2 1 point leather van braces in like an hour. But I was actually looking at the heavy leather because that's what I've been using, right? We're talking about 6 days for heavy leather van braces. I built my van braces, which includes sewing on a padded leather to it, in less than a day. So I'm not sure, unless we are talking about back here, enameled, stained, painted, etched, because making fancy designs and stuff on leather, that takes time. Maybe that's what they mean. Okay. Oh, here's something interesting. When you are creating your armor, if you get a special success on your crafting skill, it takes half as long to make. I've never made a special success on any of my crafting stuff. While a critical success, half the time spent, it adds +1 to the armor piece's armor points. Remember something else we talked about adding +1 to armor points? Maybe mastercraft or masterwork rather. To add a +1 armor point to a mastercraft or masterwork item, minus 50% on your chance to do it. And if you do, well, the critical percent number will be less, right? So it's hard to do, but if you do get a critical success, you get 3 attribute increases. So is there a different process to doing a masterwork piece of armor compared to just making a piece of armor? Maybe I can almost see that, but my gut is telling me you've got a crafter. He's doing his best work he can. You want extra armor in it? Okay. If I get a critical success, we're good to go. Otherwise, we're at -50, and I hope I get a regular success. That almost pans out. But if I roll that +1, it's going to be critical no matter what I'm doing, right? +3 instead of +1. Yeah, there's a disconnect or inconsistency that back in my head, we don't like that. Okay, making shields generally takes in hours the number of hit points of shield. So a small 8-point shield takes 8 hours to make. I don't know enough about making shields because I've never actually, bent and glued wood. I buy my blanks. I just edge them. Oh, helmets. The various kinds of helmets here. They do mention here with a full helm that your vision and hearing are severely impaired, so you get a minus 25 to your spot hidden, search, and listen rolls. Now, I know that helmets interfere with your perception skills. Not a problem. I actually had my own rules that for every point of protection was minus 5%. So for me, a great helm, 6-point protection was minus 30, but see, but they don't affect any other of the helmets, just the full helm. So rules is written. I don't have an issue with it. That's good to go. Shields. There's a comment here that except for the single exception of the sun, dome, pike, and shield combination, a shield cannot be used when using a two-handed weapon, except over here they talk about a bronze hand shield, or a hand bronze shield. Is strapped onto the hand and which can then be used to brace a two-handed spear or hold a torch. If you can hold a torch, why cannot you attack with it? Or a club? Or a sword? Now, you can be able to parry with the shield while attacking with the sword. You could, but that hand shield doesn't absorb anything close to what your sword does. So why bother, right? Because the first thing I thought of is with a two-handed sword, you're blocking with the hilt, right? Or the crossbar. It's not that much different to just stick your hand in the way. But that small shield doesn't absorb anything near doing a proper parry with the weapon. So yeah, it kind of blew my own thing. So why do we have this thing in the first place? I'm not sure. All right. Table of all the shields. Explanation of headings. They talk about because you can't parry missile weapons. I kind of let you do it with thrown because technically thrones aren't missile, if that makes any sense to you. But there's a mechanic already written in where you're blocking areas are covered with your shield, right? Okay, I've got my shield being shot at by arrows. I'm covering, my head. The way it's written though is 1 point for a small, 1 location for a small, 2 locations contiguous, 2 contiguous locations for a medium, 3 contiguous locations for a large. I've modified that myself because it includes the arm plus for a small, 1 position, arm and head, right? It's protecting both the arm and the head. It is. Or the arm and the chest, yeah, or the arm and the abdomen. It is. Medium is the arm plus 2, head and chest, or chest and abdomen, right? And since I use the RQ3 missile and spells location chart, missiles generally hit center of mass. It's not just 12 and 9 to 11. It's like 15 down to 9 still, or maybe even 8, center of mass. You're going to hit. Okay. Strength necessary to use the shield. If you don't have that strength, your chance to parry is halved. Encumbrance. They kind of mention here that's next to impossible to swim with a shield, even when it's slung. Attempting to do so halves your wielder's swim skill. Again, mechanical effects of things written into rules. Love it. I do have an issue though with materials and shields versus hit points and encumbrance. Medium shield. Hide, wicker, or wood. Now, I'm not aware of any hide shields that are strictly just hide material, right? They've got to have something reinforcing them for structure, right? In my Glorantha, shields are wood, either faced with leather or very, very thin bronze, right? A wicker shield. Same number of hit points as a wooden shield? Seriously? Now, I do know that wicker shield is actually pretty good against arrows. Not really against them because it slows them all down. They essentially suck them up, right? Like a pincushion. They get stuck in the wicker. They don't go all the way through. I get that, but a wicker shield does not weigh the same amount as a wood shield. Different encumbrance. A wicker shield does not absorb the same amount of damage from a hack and slashing weapon as a wooden shield does. So I've got kind of an issue with this. There was a set of rules. I can't remember if it was Thieves Guild or Harnmaster, where they had your shield value is modified by the material it's made out of. And of course, the weight of the shield is also modified by the material it's made out of. Further down the line, talking about players, I may kind of play with that a bit. But right now, we don't have wicker shields. We don't have hide. They're all wood. Okay. Beast armor. So you can buy armor for your beast, like your horse, your llama, your bison, right? They do make a comment here that only bison and rhinos can have heavy armor on their lower body. So we're talking about the legs, right? Everything else is kind of draped over the body of the beast. And they got a table here for beast armors, what the material's made out of, hit locations, how much it absorbs, and covers for 10 points of size of the critter, and the cost for 10 points of size of the critter. Good to go. We have not run into that yet. We haven't had anybody actually armor up any of their mounts or critters, so we haven't worried about that. Non-human armor table. Nice chart here with this, these rare kinds of things like elven bark armor, or armor made for very small critters like a duck or a trollkin, and then lead armor made for trolls. Again, material, type, location, the species that this is associated with, hit location, absorption, encumbrance, cost, movement quietly. Now, I do have a thing here about elvish armor, elven bark armor, actually adding to your move quietly roll, but only in woodland and rural settings. I don't quite see the necessity of specifying only in woodland and rural settings, because I would think that elves would make their armor help when they're underground fighting trolls and dwarves. Because if you're fighting trolls and dwarves, you're going to want to have armor. I don't know. I haven't thought through all that all the way yet. There was something else. Oh, cost for lead armor with trolls versus other people. Okay, what do we got going? Oh, it's got the tortoiseshell stuff in here too. Anything else? Oh, okay. Oh, it's the tortoiseshell cuirass for ducks because they're small, right? Okay. Beast weapon augmentation. Nothing I've not touched yet at all. So if you've got your cavalry bison, you can use horn plating, rings or ridges, bronze plating, or spikes, things you can add to their horns, right? Or for that matter, their hooves. Yeah, I had missed that earlier, which makes sense too, right? So they get a damage bonus. They can get a damage bonus, and they can increase the absorption for that hit location as well. And of course, there's a cost associated. So you can deck out your cavalry bison with bronze hooves and bronze horns to really make mincemeat out of your opponent, because of course, bisons don't really make mincemeat out of anybody in the first place. Of course they do. Okay, a couple cool comments here about non-human armor. Humanoids above size 21 use the human armor table, but increase cost and encumbrance by 1.5. Round up. Very small humans up to size 8 reduce cost and encumbrance by 1/4. They count ducks differently because their anatomy is slightly different, I believe. And probably the same thing with trollkin. Unusually shaped human-sized creatures pay 1/3 more in human cultures due to rarity and convenience. I'm not sure what an unusually shaped human-sized creature would be offhand, but I'm sure there's some out there. And trolls prefer lead. And that's it for armor. Happy gaming.